If Oliver Cromwell were here today, what do you think he might make of what's going on in our nation?
You'd be disappointed at the state of Parliament. Unfortunately, there are increasing commentators who think that as a nation we're being pushed to the brink of a civil war, and that's what Oliver Cromwell ultimately had to be involved in, to try and get some control over an autocratic monarchy. I think we know the threats to humanity and our way of life now is being perpetrated against us by pretty evil forces. Governments or politicians, those in power, have forgotten that they are the servants of the people, they're not their masters. I think the people now are in fear of what they're sitting thinking, what is the government going to inflict upon us next? Not, oh, these are our servants who are our servant leaders who are there to make life better for us. And when the people are scared of the politicians, that is tyranny. But when the politicians are scared of the people, then that is liberty and democracy. And I'm afraid we're a long way from the latter. We do need to get back to reminding our politicians that they're there to serve the public, not themselves. And that was basically what Cromwell went in there and said, you're self-serving. You're a self-serving parliament, be gone.
I'm delighted to be joined today by Andrew Bridgen, probably one of the best known and possibly most loved politicians in British politics. Andrew has stood for truth and for justice, for openness and honesty in a way that few others have done. I'm sure that you will find our conversation interesting, informative, and I hope it will be encouraging and inspirational as well. So Andrew, here we are. This is Huntingdon. It's the birthplace of Oliver Cromwell, who arguably had a very important part to play in our democracy. If Oliver Cromwell were here today, what do you think he might make of what's going on in our nation?
I think he'd be very disappointed. I think he'd be disappointed at the state of Parliament. He's a man who had expressed his disappointment at Parliament a long time ago. Unfortunately, there are increasing commentators, well-informed commentators, who think that as a nation we're being pushed to the brink of a civil war, and that's what Oliver Cromwell ultimately had to be involved in, to try and get some control over an autocratic monarchy. I think we know the threats to humanity and our way of life now is being perpetrated against us by pretty evil forces. And I think in dealing with those forces, and I think we will deal with them collectively, we've got to be very careful we don't turn into them.
Yes, yeah.
Otherwise, what have we won?
Yeah. Two things that stand out for me with Oliver Cromwell when I think about him are two quotes, and I think he said them both, although Richard Harris in the film Cromwell immortalized one. The first is, God, not man, is king. And that, of course, was crucially important in relation to Charles I and really the power of the state. And the second was, to Parliament, in the name of God, go.
Be gone.
When you think about those two, this idea that God, not man, is king, and that Parliament, if it cannot serve the needs and the interests of the people, should go, how do you think that might apply and work out in our world today?
Well, I think that's where we are, Chan, and it's not just our Parliament. I honestly think that we need a whole new system of governance in the UK and in many parts of the world. The current system of governance has got us into the mess we're in. I don't think it's capable of getting us out of it. I think the system of governance we are in, or has been developed for us, it does not serve the people. It serves those it was set up to serve. I think we do need a complete change. I think the governments or politicians, those in power, have forgotten that they are the servants of the people, they're not their masters. And that has all been forgotten. And I think the people now are in fear of what they're sitting thinking, what is the government going to inflict upon us next? Not, oh, these are our servants who are our servant leaders who are there to make life better for us. And you know, I'm reminded of an old quote which I've used very often. I think it sums up the situation. You know, when the people are scared of the politicians, that is tyranny. But when the politicians are scared of the people, then that is liberty and democracy. And I'm afraid we're a long way from the latter. We do need to get back to reminding our politicians that they're there to serve the public, not themselves. And that was basically what Cromwell went in there and said, you're in 1640s and said, you're self-serving, you're a self-serving parliament. For all the good you are, be gone.
What do you think, Andrew, has changed in Britain since 2020, which seems to have been a watershed in so many respects?
I think the public were exposed in 2020 to a massive psychological operation, and I don't think there's been any let up since. I went on the mainstream media during the pandemic, and I said that I was shocked that the British people had given up freedoms so easily, freedoms that had taken hundreds of years to achieve during the pandemic over something which probably wasn't as serious as it was made out to be. But that fear that was instilled in people, it's been maintained. And the trouble is that when you get people scared, they do lots of behaviours. They're looking for leadership. They are going to go with the herd, and they're susceptible to influencing. And there's been no shortage of that. I mean, I used to think, perhaps a few years ago, that we'd been subject to a psychological operation. I'm absolutely of the mind now that we're never out of one, and they only intensify it. I don't think we're out of. After the pandemic and the lockdowns, the social distancing, the isolation, we had 1 million under 25s on waiting lists for mental health support. It has devastated us as a nation. It's damaged our economy. We've slapped £450 billion on the national credit card, around the debt around the necks of future generations. I mean, it's just an absolute disaster. And the disappointing thing is we haven't got any politicians willing to sit back and say, let's have a debate. How could we have done this better? What went wrong? Because no one wants to admit anything's gone wrong, because so much political capital was put in on the right and on the left and everywhere else that the proposals put forward by the World Health Organization were absolutely perfect.
Yes. Now, you speak extensively, you travel a lot here and abroad. When you talk to audiences, when you have questions and answer sessions, when you talk to people in the streets, because you're a very well-known face, what are some of the things that people are saying to you? What are you hearing the British public saying?
I don't know. I can't walk on pretty much any street in the UK without people coming up and wanting to shake my hand and say thank you. Some people seem to think I'm a hero, and that goes across the continent as well. But I mean, the sad thing is that the bar for heroes is very, very low in the world at the moment. And apparently, just speaking the truth, I mean, that is just a sad testament to the state of public affairs. People are waking up and they're looking for guidance. A lot of people know there's something wrong but can't quite put their finger on it. And a lot of people don't want to talk about what they think's going wrong in our society, because they think they're feeling isolated and they think they're the only one in the street that's got those views, and that's not true. Increasingly, I mean, the vast majority of people now think there's something wrong with the COVID-19 vaccines. Obviously, it's not reported adequately in the mainstream media, but we're currently in a situation where 90% of doctors and nurses wouldn't take another booster, wouldn't even take this winter's flu vaccine, because last winter's flu vaccine had 27% negative efficacy, meaning everyone who took it was 27% more likely to get the flu or another respiratory infection. So all we need now is confirmation. I just wish that the doctors and nurses who do know what's gone on and went on during the pandemic, I just wish that they would come out now and tell the public what they've been discussing privately amongst themselves for a very, very long time. The GMC can't dismiss all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were in Parliament and on several occasions in the House of Commons when you began to speak or people had noticed that you were going to speak. The chamber was emptied almost apart from those who statutorily had to be
Yep.
present. What was going on there? What did people say to you?
Well, my colleagues in the House of Commons could not say that they didn't know that I was speaking. I'd run social media campaigns where I'd asked everyone to email if they thought the issue of excess deaths was important, and it's an issue that affected every constituency and every community up and down our land. I would have thought it was of concern. And my point was, okay, if we've had a pandemic where we've had excess deaths, if the weaker and the vulnerable had sadly passed before their time during a pandemic, if they might have in other circumstances have lived for another 6, 12, 18 months, if we had excess deaths during a pandemic, there has to be a time after the pandemic where we have less than expected deaths. But we didn't, Chan. We only had excess deaths. We kept having them. And I wanted to get to the truth of what the explanation was. And I think I made my views very clear that I felt it was the COVID-19 vaccines. And I asked anyone of the public who shared my concerns around the safety and efficacy of the vaccines or what was causing these excess deaths to urge their own MP to attend the debate I was leading in the House of Commons. And of course, I know that was one of the top issues that week in their inbox, or every MP's inbox. And so they couldn't say they didn't know about it. So they were deliberately avoiding confronting a debate. If you're not in the room, they can claim that they didn't hear my speech. They could claim they were busy doing something else. But I mean, it's basically they bottled out of it, and they would be under a lot of pressure from their whips to not attend, and claim that they didn't have foreknowledge. That is disingenuous, and it's a betrayal of their own electorate, and running away from the facts. And sadly, I'm aware that many colleagues shared my concerns, but for whatever reason, they were unwilling to question the policies of Big Pharma. I always thought we were supposed to speak in elected chambers, whether that's a parish council, the chamber of the House of Commons, or any other chamber, without fear or favour. And my experience, sadly, has been in politics that there's a lot of fear, a lot of intimidation, and there's also a lot of favour. People are offered bribes. In January 2022, I was offered anything I wanted to shut up. But that meant I had to accept that they were going to injure and kill a lot of children with vaccines, and I couldn't do that.
I want to come back to that and the motivations. In the last 5 years, nearly 6 years now, we've heard people use the term conspiracy theory. Talk about how relevant that is and what that truly means in our world today, now that you know what you know.
Well, conspiracy theory apparently that phrase was created to undermine people who had concerns about the circumstances of the death of JFK in America. And that was a completely created smear that could be used in the mainstream media to label someone and give people an excuse for not listening to them and not paying any attention to any of their concerns. And it has been used consistently ever since. But my problem is that, if we want to, I'm probably going to have to get some new conspiracy theories, Chan, because all my old ones have already been proven true.
Yes. So we have this situation now where the House of Commons chamber is emptied. We even find the national broadcaster um, providing subtitles or captions
Oh yes.
over your speech, for which I believe you may have taken a formal complaint
To Ofcom, and
Talk to us a little bit about that, and why you think.
Well,
why did people want to do this?
That was the first debate in the world, any parliament, about excess deaths. It took me 9 months. And as an MP, you're allowed to put in for an adjournment debate at the end of the day, a Westminster Hall debate, private members, a 10-minute rule bill, and you can basically do that every sitting week. And I applied every sitting week from the beginning of January 2023, and I didn't get. You can't apply, obviously, during recess weeks. I didn't get the debate until October, and I only got that. Every week I got back, it came back on the computer from the Speaker's office, unsuccessful in ballot. Unsuccessful in ballot, unsuccessful. I mean, every time unsuccessful. And that was 3 applications a week.
And is this a computerised ballot?
Well, supposedly, but I mean, you can see, Cham, I don't play the lottery, can't you? Unsuccessful in ballot. And in the summer of 2023, I did a lot of research into thalidomide, which is a scandal. Obviously, it was before my time, and that was quite enlightening to go and look at that. Thalidomide was created by a company called Grünenthal, the German company formed after the war, and they'd recruited ex-Nazis, scientists, as their research scientists. Indeed, their chief scientist of Grünenthal, who created thalidomide, was a gentleman by the name of Heinrich Mulker, and he'd been indicted for war crimes in Poland, but never convicted. And he developed thalidomide, a drug which it turned out they before they marketed it, they gave it away free to their staff. And an employee's wife gave birth to a baby with no ears, but they never said anything about it, and it went to market. Well, thalidomide caused devastating harm to those who received it, pregnant ladies, babies. Its selling point of thalidomide was you couldn't overdose on it. It was an anti-nausea drug, so you could take as much as you wanted, apparently. And of course, what they didn't know, or maybe they did, was that thalidomide crossed the placenta blood barrier, went to and affected the unborn fetus by preventing angiogenesis, which is the formation of blood vessels. The effects depended on the amount that the mother took and the stage of gestation of the fetus when thalidomide was taken. But half of the babies died, and half were born with many of them were born with life-changing disabilities because they couldn't form blood vessels. It prevented that. They ended up with very, very short limbs. And it was withdrawn from the market in 1961 in Europe. But it was 1972 before the word thalidomide was ever allowed to be mentioned in the chamber of the House of Commons. An 11-year cover-up. Grünenthal also had injunctions on UK newspapers to prevent them running stories linking the birth defects to thalidomide, and that was overturned by the European Court of Justice in Strasbourg. And the ruling of those 3 judges, which the state is damning, and it said that consecutive speakers of the House of Commons had deliberately suppressed all debate and questions on thalidomide for 11 years. And I made this little documentary about all of this, and I sent it to Lindsay Hoyle, who's the Speaker of the House of Commons, at the end of summer recess 2023, with the note was, we wouldn't want history to repeat itself, would we, Lindsay? And he got me a date for the first debate in the world on excess deaths in October. Okay, I think it was a Friday afternoon again, but it was, beggars can't be choosers, and I was grateful for anything. And of course, the chamber was completely empty. The BBC had obviously prepared a hit job on me. For the first time ever for a parliamentary speech, they put a ticker with subtitles for context, apparently, underneath. But they were talking about messages saying the MMR vaccine is safe for children, and I wasn't talking about any of that. I mean, anybody who had the sound turned down on my speech on the television would think I was talking about that, but no, I wasn't. Anyway, so that was unprecedented. It was obviously pre-planned. There were 9 messages they put out while I was speaking, which were ludicrous. It's never been done before. I made a complaint to Ofcom, and they upheld my complaint. And I got the nearest thing you're going to get to an apology from the BBC. And they've never done it again to anybody else. I mean, that's how scared they were, Chan. And if my colleagues or anyone else challenged what I was saying, they should have come into the chamber and intervened on me and debated with me, but they didn't. And also, I'll point out that of all the speeches I gave, which were considered, going against the narrative, we have a rule in Parliament that you don't have to be in the chamber. If you read the Hansard record the next day and say that is incorrect, factually incorrect, you can write to the Speaker and he will force the member to come in at the first opportunity and put the record straight. No one ever asked me to come in and put the record straight after any of my speeches, did they? That means they know it was the truth.
So Hansard now records the concerns that you raised,
yes,
about the danger to the British public,
yes,
of, shall we call them, untried, untested medical interventions.
Well, you have to remember that big pharma, pharmaceutical companies, they have no fiduciary, their only fiduciary duty is to make profit for shareholders. They have no fiduciary duty or obligation to give you, me, or anybody else in the world safe and effective medicine. And I would come back to the thalidomide. The marketing slogan for thalidomide was safe and effective. And after the disaster that was thalidomide, Grunethal negotiated immunity from prosecution worldwide for a mere £3 million of compensation fund for the victims. We've all heard that before. And after thalidomide, it became illegal for a pharmaceutical company to claim that their products were safe and effective without caveats, because there's always side effects anyway. But of course, during COVID-19, it wasn't actually Big Pharma that was saying their products were safe and effective. It was the politicians and our health regulators and advisors. They were doing the marketing for Big Pharma, making claims that Big Pharma legally couldn't make about those products, following on from thalidomide. It's absolutely shocking. And Big Pharma, they withdrew a drug, thalidomide, they knew was causing immense harm to pregnant women and their babies in 1961. They didn't withdraw it in South America till 1962. And I've seen evidence of letters between Grunethal, Germany, to Grunethal, Madrid. And bear in mind that in 1961, 62, Spain was not a democracy. It was a dictatorship run under General Franco. And the letter says to the office of Grunethal in Madrid, if you don't choose to inform the doctors in Spain that we're withdrawing, we will stand with you. They knew exactly what that drug was doing. They were making money out of it. They carried on prescribing it in Spain until 1985.
So when did they stop using thalidomide in the United Kingdom?
1961.
61. But we saw the effects of...
there are still about 3,000 affected thalidomide victims alive in the UK today. And I can't imagine that their needs, as they approach retirement now, they will be at retirement age, they're only going to increase, aren't they?
That's right.
But there were tens of thousands, and worldwide it was enormous. They are still actually, they repurposed, as they often do with these drugs, they repurposed thalidomide as a treatment for leprosy. And in parts of the world there are still, because they're obviously not supposed to prescribe it to pregnant women, there are still babies being born with thalidomide. Although Grunethal will try and claim that, or the manufacturers now try and claim that it's counterfeit thalidomide being used. I severely doubt that.
So Andrew, when we talk about these issues, and people watching this video will see that it's a very grim story, because this is just one of many that you're concerned about, and we've talked about, and others are concerned about, things that seem like a direct assault on humanity, and here in the United Kingdom, on the people of this nation. What are your thoughts about how we can go forward, and how people watching this video can help to be part of the solution rather than just part of a depressing story that looks as though it may end in some kind of dystopian future?
Well, maybe that is the outcome that some parties have in mind for us. I think we can do rather better than that, Jan. I think the human spirit is irrepressible. I think too many people know what's going on, and I'm hoping that the great British public, who are always slow to rise, will rise up and say no to the dystopian future. I mean, we haven't talked about so many things. You know, the digital ID is a trap, and it's always easier to avoid a trap than get out if we get in it. And I would ask people to think about the future. It's a one-way street. We're going to give governments huge powers over us, the power to effectively by linking it to our bank accounts and the central bank digital currency, every aspect of our lives. Would you trust this government with that sort of power over any individual? And bear in mind that we would not only be giving away our freedoms, we'll be giving away our children, our grandchildren, and generations of our nation yet unborn, because this is a one-way street. And I don't think that freedom is ours to give away for future generations. And even if you trusted this government, which I think is unlikely that many people do, you've got to bear in mind that you'd have to trust all the future governments, and we don't know who they're going to be and what their policies are going to be. Why would you ever give that sort of power for a bit of convenience or a bit of security? And as history shows, those who are willing to give up their freedom for apparent security and convenience, they get neither freedom nor security. And the only convenience is that the powers that be, our governments, will find it very easy to control us. And I'll just say on that, it's an existential threat to our freedom, but we can say no. And if you don't say no to digital ID, I worry you'll never be able to say no to the government ever again. And no's a very small word, but if millions and millions of us say it, it will resonate, even in the halls of those so-called self-proclaimed elites. And if we stand together and we stand united, we can reverse all of this. And really, when this nightmare is over, and it will be over, we can then build something rather better to ensure that we're never put back into this. Humanity is never put back into this situation ever again.
Yes. Well, as you say, Andrew, there are a number of other things we need to talk about. The fact that it's been raining endlessly for much of 2026, and a number of other things. Because this has been quite a long video already, and I don't want to lose people, I think it'd be good to have this conversation on some of these other subjects again.
Absolutely, it's been really good fun. You've got a great studio here as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.